Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here to discuss Round 11 footy action with my Supercoach team discussion, all the AFL ins and outs, and the questions that you guys have sent in. As always, check out all our sponsors, Earn You, Manscaped, and Splash Vodka. And as always, we appreciate all the support, especially those who have been checking us out on Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. Continue to contact us via the YouTube feedback section or Twitter, Supercoach Insider 100 for all three of us, or Swiz26 for me directly. Getting straight into my team last week, 2,500, finally bounced back with a decent score. Much appreciative by the efforts of Mr. Clayton Oliver with his, was it 177 as captain, so yeah, no, it was nice to 178. Sorry, as captain. So it was nice to have that sewn up on the Saturday. So that moved me up about 5,000 places this week. So back to 6,000 overall. So it's nice to start to make some ground back on the boys and that, and hopefully we'll continue that way. I saw a few massive scores out there in the community this week. So well done to those people, especially those who were playing Wits over Gorn. That's been a fantastic pickup, as we've been talking about each week. Straight into the teams and outs, and like every week we seem to talk about carnage, and there was a few trades that we were talking about. Unfortunately, these ins and outs again have killed us. So Sydney, Richmond, Friday night, it's going to be a massive game. Rowbottom, Reid and Roberts come in. Matty Roberts has been in the system for a couple of years now. The good thing about him, he's got some really good under 18 scoring. I think there was even a 200-point game in there, but it was some massive scores when he was a junior. Obviously, the issue straight off is going to be his job security, and we don't need to be moving on him straight away, but it's one to definitely watch, and hopefully he can sort of cement his spot now that Kennedy's out with those hamstring injuries, so that'll be a bit of a watch as Iridian, Bell, Kennedy and Hickey goes out from that team. That should help people who are still holding Laddams, because he's up back in the ruck against Nankervis. And for the ties, Graham and Pickett come in. Arts, Lambert, Lynch is out. If you've still got Tommy Lynch, or one of those very few people brought him in for that sort of cash cow, you're going to have to trade him this week. Jake Arts, something Grimo pointed out to me earlier today, just a bit of a watch there. Has been played sub, I think, 5 of the last 6 games, so he's got a lot of low scores, and if he was to come back on as the sub this week, he is out, but he's named in that sub spot. He could be finding himself cheaper than 150, and if Richmond were to get a couple injuries or they finally drop Castagna, Arts might benefit for that, so just one to watch going forward. We've got the Lions and the Giants, and this is the big one. The Lions, McStay, Dev Robertson and Adams in. Out is McCluggage, which is very interesting for those discussing about Jared Lyons prospects. Jack Payne, Mitch Robertson and Fullerton also out. The Giants, in Ash and Keefe out, Kennedy, Stein and O'Halloran. The big news there is Bruce is not named in the starting 22. He is named on the emergency list. So there could always be a late change, but they were talking about this week, maybe just keeping with Flynn, and that's exactly what the Giants have done. So that is going to be a big discussion point, and we may as well focus on that right now. If you have Sammy Hayes, and we'll get onto that discussion there, there's a possibility that you can use him as cover, but if you don't have any cover at all, it might be a trade time. And when we sort of get with a couple of those other ins and outs, there'll be a couple of options. But it's just a shame because Bruce has been scoring really well for us. And yeah, we're really hoping he'd get straight back in the side, but that has not happened. For those who brought in Hamilton, he is not named. He only had 10 touches in the VFL last week, so not even on the emergency. But Weir did keep his spot, so he's played the one game so far. It looked all right, kicked a nice goal, so yeah, might be an option there for if people are looking for that cash cow. But then, it's kind of how are the McVeigh and Hurd going to, line up the Giants going forward? Like if Weir has one bad game, is he back out? But at least he is named on field, so that is one possibility for those who are looking for a defensive option. But job security in these defenders at the moment isn't great. Yeah, Weir last week, 13 touches, kicked a nice goal, so with the sort of injuries they've had, and with Whitfield and kind of the side that they played last week, obviously had a nice win. It'd be interesting to see how they back up against the Lions now. That sort of that sugar hit that they got playing against West Coast and the new coach, I think that drops off. Brisbane coming off the loss, so hopefully Weir sees some ball down in that defence. But it might be the issue where they just swap him straight off for Hamilton the following week. So it doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence with that. But unfortunately, there's not a huge amount of rookies presenting themselves at the moment. So definitely one to be interested in. Cats have only made one change out Dangerfield, which means Cooper Stevens has kept his spot. A couple of 60s. He had that game which was sub but didn't come on, so it hasn't affected his scoring, which is great. And he is named on the wing, so he is the main rookie this week to be looking at. Now that when we get a couple of these other ins and outs, but definitely one to consider. The only problem is again Geelong job security, and with that emergency list that they have with Delhouse, Narkle. They always an option to come in at some point, but they do still have Evans and O'Connor, Myers on the interchange bench, so one of them might drop out before them. So he's looked pretty good. The fact that they've named him on the wing, Dangerfield's injury is going to be at least sort of 2-3 weeks. Yeah, there's an opportunity there for him, and we've said this, the Cats have got to kind of blood a few kids in that setup. They can't just keep playing the older guys, so hopefully he gets a good run at it. For the Crows, Butts, Crouch, Rye, O is back. Have a little look at those draft waivers. People may have dropped him off. And Malira, and out is Chase Jones. Rochelle has been managed, so if you've still got Rochelle, it might be a time to move him on. Kieran Struan's gone. Scholl and Tex Walker with the old COVID protocols. D's versus Freo at the G. Viney in for Langdon and Dunstan. Freo Walker and Tucker in for Banfield, Erasmus and Swilkowski. For the if you're still for whatever reason holding Bowie, still in that back line, so but he's been struggling with his scoring, so probably should have moved him on. And for Fremantle, Heath Chapman still there. Will Brodie named in the guts, looks so good, and the weather, it's not looking great this weekend. So it's not probably the best thing for Brayshaw owners. I was kind of feeling for you guys there because it's more going to be those in and under games. Brodie can sort of go in. Brayshaw can go inside and outside, but Brodie's that more inside ball. So I think he's benefiting because you look at the Freo's last two games and they've struggled because they're more used to that outside run. It's been absolute torrential rain up in Gold Coast, and they copped it last week in Perth, and they're meant to be copping some rain this week, so it will be very interesting to see how they handle that for the third week in a row. West Coast versus Bulldogs. So the Weagles, we've got Kennedy and SPS are back in. Hugh Dixon has been dropped, so yeah, if you've still got him, probably move on that. Rotham and Paddy Nash. In is Waitman, Duray, and Timmy English is back, so that is one of those options for Bruce. The issue is when I go through these out, I'll go through these outs. You've got Rourke Smith and Cordy. Jordan Sweet is not part of those outs, so he is still playing. So there's a bit of a decision to make there what English's role. The other two outs are Bailey Smith with illness, and Luke Cleary has been dropped. Buku is still in, so that's good for those who brought him in. Unfortunately, Cleary, like myself, people were waiting to bring him in this week, has looked really good in his first two games, and unfortunately has been dropped for Duray. Bevo kind of made that noise about it earlier this week, and that Duray could be coming in for him, and yeah, he stood by that. So we've it's a really interesting one because I know a lot of people, including myself, was going Martin to Cleary, so there'll be some reverse trading going on there. Cleary is named on the emergency list with I think it's Bernardo, Jones, and Shaki. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully Bevo doesn't muck us around and put Cleary on as an emergency, because that could be very interesting. Timmy English is currently named in the ruck with Jordan Sweet on the bench, so we'll see how they line up there. You'd think English is the more likeable one to go forward, and Sweet plays more ruck, so they're only up against Jamison, so it might be one to look at, Bruce to English for those who want to do that, but then some people might want to wait and see sort of how he goes. Bailey Smith out is fantastic for non-owners because he's going to pick up forward status, and with his break even, we can kind of wait one more week on that. If you have him, that is very unfortunate. And yeah, some people will look at going Bont this week. Bont is named in the forward line again, so they've named McRae, Dunkley and Treloar. I know some people were saying last week you kind of don't need to focus on the sort of how teams line up, but the Bulldogs seem to be a bit true with that, and they've been starting Bont a lot of the time up in the forward line. Against West Coast, he should still be good enough to kick some goals and get enough of the ball that he'll be a good option, but I don't think he's probably going to go the 150, but now that I've said that, he'll probably go 150 and go up 20k and price everyone out. We've got the Suns versus the Hawks. So the Suns in Davies, Graham Sharp, out Frierini, Farah, Thompson. Rory Thompson can't get a break at it. Fortunate for all those people who brought him in over Buku and Lemons. And back for the Hawks is Connor McDonald and Scrimshaw, out Amira Hardigan and Max Lynch. Max Lynch being a big out because at the moment Kaczynski is named in the ruck against Jared Witts. Definitely something to consider. It's unfortunate to have to pay 250k more than those who got Witts at the start, but Witts versus a non-ruckman, and especially one, was Kaczynski's first proper year last year. Been in the system for a couple of years before that, but if he's their ruck option, and Witts got 55 hit-outs against Sweet last week in the sort of those conditions that are usually up there in Darwin, where there's a lot of throw-ups and ball-ins and that, because it gets a bit slippery and players are diving on each other. Witts could have an absolute field day as an absolute captain option if you have him, and definitely somebody to consider to go Bruce to him if you wanted to do that. Witts has been on absolute fire this year. St Kilda North, that's the Sunday game. Butler, Linnet and Mitchie Owens are named in. So those who try to loophole Owens, just better check that to come tomorrow when final teams are done. And for the Kangas, Marnie, Archer and Stephenson is in. Tristan Cherry has been named on the extended bench for those who are kind of looking at him with Goldie in the ruck. So there's a chance that Cherry might find himself out of the side. What have we got? Collingwood, Carlton, the big one. I think Chris is coming down for that game. So the Pies have brought in Poulter, McGuinness and Rusco. Only one out so far for the Blues, which is Kemp, with Martin, Nunes, Boyd and Dow back. Darcy Cameron is named in the ruck. The good one there is there's no in for Mason Cox, I believe. Or actually, no, he probably should. No, he is named because he did play last week. He got subbed off, so he has actually been named in the forward line. So that could be interesting because they have been talking about playing Mason Cox sometime in the ruck, but we hope that doesn't happen because Darcy Cameron looks so good in the ruck at the moment. And the last game, Port Adelaide versus Essendon. The Power have brought back Charlie Dixon, McEntry, and Riley Bonner. The Bombers have dropped Redmond. Redmond's out suspended. Guelphy's injured, and Bryan's the one dropped. Phillips, BZT, Ham, Jones, Ridley, and Caldwell all in at the moment. Extended bench, which has got Hines, Jones, Caldwell, Phillips, Cutler, Francis, Ham, and Wanganeen all on that. And for the Power there, Motlop, Georgiades, Farrell, Bonner, Lockie, Jones, Miautri, Frederick, and the big one, Sam Hayes, is named on an extended bench. Currently in the fourth spot. The hope will be he will play. There's a bit of weather apparently around. They have named Finlayson as the starting ruck. One to watch when teams are named tomorrow, and that may change all our strategies. And that's why, if you look at my side there, I haven't done actually any trades yet this week. Definitely waiting to sort of see what happens there. Didn't end up using my boost last week. I backed out my bringing in Dawson and Sinker, which was a little bit frustrating in the end. But at the same time, because of McCartan and DeConning went so well, and I was loopholing DeConning, those 85s, I wasn't completely complaining with that. And reverse trading and keeping Cornelio in the end worked well. So it's just a question of what I do with Martin. It was going to be Cleary, but it's likely to be Cooper Stevens now, and then using that cash to either put Hinge up to Jack Sinclair. Bont's also on my mind, but if Sammy Hayes is not named, then there's a huge consideration for me to either bring back Timmy English. I don't like Darcy only because of his break-even at the moment. Otherwise, I don't mind that pick, but Jared Witts just paying up for him. If he's going to be this number one or number two ruck this year, I think it's nearly time I just bite the bullet and get him in. because he's definitely a captain option. At the moment, I've got Neil playing the Giants into Clayton Oliver, who's playing Freo. I think Clary's just going to continue to kill it as those contested balls. So yeah, that's my option there. I don't like the Sunday game. It seems to cost me a bit. A few people say this about that dreaded Sunday and leaving your captain there. So if you've got Mills Friday night, even Heaney is a sneaky one. They could be interesting, but I think, you're sort of looking at those two. And then the Dogs, especially Bailey Smith out now, McRae definitely could be an option. Well, should be one of your considerations there. The only issue with that is they play straight after the Melbourne Freo game. So if you're thinking Clary into McRae, you just got to be ready to go in case Clary goes really well. All right, on to your questions. Once again, thank you so much for those people who've sent them in. All right, so we'll start off. Abdul, which is the better F7 option? He's flying that well, 4th overall, that he's thinking about F7. DeGoey, Lipinski, Cogs, Coleman, Hill, Rioli. I don't know about Hill and Rioli, but mate, if you can push Cogs to F7, that's amazing. One suggestion for people talking about that, if they were in that position or looking at that position, Darcy Cameron will be a good one once he gets dual position, because having him that F7, keeping him around where you can bring him on the forward line, bring him in the ruck line, definitely something there. If somebody's asked which Dan Rioli. Yeah, no, I'd go to DeGoey or Cogs out of those two options, mate. To Steve, I think it's he's talking about the F7. Again, from Lee, Sinclair or Doherty for the final defensive spot. Yeah, real flip of the coin. Sinclair looks so good now with Steele out, so I'm going Sinclair. But then in saying that, I already have Doherty. But I still think if you've got to make that choice there, I'd be going Sinclair at the moment. Just seems to be better role because of Jack Steele being out. I think it's unfairly called them an F7. Many teams. That's the same question there. And I know some people discussing that even with their M9 and that. Like, you usually end up in that position. I think even years where I've had to trade out with injuries and with more trades this year, you usually end up with that position where you can either trade up or do I bring a cheaper guy in, especially if you're looking at value, say for Tom Mitchell or Zach Merritt. Is there a guy that you can target as a loophole option for your forward or midfield or forward to defence? So that's what some of those teams that are cashed up are already planning to do. All right, what have we got here? Harry, time to... Oh, no, so I've lost it. There he is. Harry, time to move on. Bruce might not make any trades this week considering Cleary is out now. Bruce, in a perfect world, if you've got cover, keep him. If you don't have cover, obviously you're going to have to move it. And it's just frustrating because, Flynn plays well again. We might see Flynn stay in. To Julie, hey Swiss, can you talk about the ruck situation? Yeah, I think this is a big question this week. I have Gawn, then Bruce and Hayes. Hayes on the extended bench. And it could be another. If you've got the cash to do it, and Bruce isn't named, there is a world where you could bring in Witts for Hayes, put Bruce on your bench. Bruce's break even, I think, still around the 40 mark, so averaging the 120s and that, and it probably gives you a little bit of flexibility through the buys, and then sort of work out what you can do. If you had the choice, and she's asking, do you Witts or Sean Darcy? Yeah, I'd be going Witts at the moment. To Freeze, I'm probably too late, but can't decide over Chapman or Dacos to Stewart. I'd go probably Chapman to Stewart, but I think it's a much of a muchness there for both. Yeah, I don't mind the call on Stewart to get him in if you especially got the money to do it. I'd go Chapman if I had to make the choice between those two. Corey, what do I do with a rookie pick then other than Cleary? If you're desperate for a defender, you could go Weir. Elijah Hollins, as much as Ben thought he'd be named, was named on the emergency list too. So take that discussion that we had out on Tuesday. Just completely out of the question now. So I think it's got to be Stevens. Sigaleo from Adelaide. I'm just not 100% convinced on him as well. So, I think you've got to go Stevens if you need one. But I'm not convinced with a lot of these rookies that it is a bit of a hit and hope with them, and I hope Stevens continues to play well. Brent has loads of questions now, just carnage. With no rookies, was going to go Hinge and Martin for Bont and Cleary via DPP, but with no rookies, is it silly to trade Bruce and Martin for Bont and Sinclair? It's not silly, and mate, a lot of people are going to be in that position. At least Bont's going to get forward status unless Bevo really screwed us over, and I don't think he could do that twice to us on the weekend. But the issue is if English comes in, could he play a bit more midfield? But I don't think he's going to play enough midfield to come. I think he's got to play something like 90% midfield for him to lose forward status. So I don't mind that. But the question is, what are you going to do with your rucks after that? For context, I have Witts, Bruce, and Hayes. And that, well, that's the big one, mate. You're going to have to tune in tomorrow, like a lot of us, and see if Sam Hayes actually gets picked. If he gets picked, then fine, do it. If he doesn't, that becomes a bit of more of a question. And I'm gathering you were waiting for Gawn to get cheap there. To Nelson, Durden and SDK for Sinclair, McCartan, F6, or SDK and McCartan for Stewart, played Durden, F6 for only 1 week. Playing Durden only for the 1 week's not a bad option, and that was it. Durden for Sinclair and McCartan or for Stewart, mate. I actually really like Sinclair. That I was still debating between him and Dawson last week. Wanted to see who goes better, and they both went really well with the role. So if you wanted to save some cash and then with McCartan there, it's not a bad call. But yeah, mate, kind of go with if you. It's one of those things. If you've got the cash to go to Stewart, just go and do it. And that, but if you're trying to save some cash because you might need, if you're forward planning here and thinking about what you're doing next week or the week after in the buys, and you're like, okay, I'm going to need the cash to get Bont in or another premium midfielder, then maybe go the cheaper option in Sinclair. If you got as much cash as you're going to need, then go the better player, which is Stewart. Isaac asked the same thing. Time to upgrade Bruce. Was considering moving on next week. Looking at Darcy, English, Gawn. Leaning towards Darcy at the moment. That's a different question. If you're doing Darcy versus Gawn or English, I'm a bit worried about English just coming back and Sweet's still in the side. If English was right to go, they would have dropped Sweet. So I'm going to say no to English just yet. Darcy's got a really high break even, but then so's Gawn. So I'd probably have, if I had to rank, and I'd go Gawn, Darcy, English. To Matt, thoughts on Stevens now that Danger is out for a few, and would you go anywhere near Soligo after his latest price rise, but a decent role now? The decent role will probably change now that they've brought back Crouch, so I'm not that keen on him. Stevens is the one that I think, as I said earlier, at least he's on the wing. They've got some injuries. It's just how long, and that one bad game and he's out, but he's a talented player, so hopefully they keep him in. To Brad, would you trade Bruce to Witts? This question is coming up a lot now. And could we get Leon Cameron back to put Hamilton in? Once again, Hayes, mate. Absolutely. Yeah, people, it's funny that people are adding it on once they found out they had Hayes news. So, it's pretty simple this week. That's the big one. Tomorrow night, we'll get the final teams for Port Adelaide. Hayes named. You can hold Bruce, no problems there. But don't expect a huge score. I think Hayes is probably going 50 or 60. The Bombers have been struggling the ruck, but very likely they could play both rucks in Phillips and Draper this week. So if they go the zero rucks, then if you end up with the zero rucks between Bruce and Hayes, then you've probably got to trade one of them. If you've got the extra cash, trade Hayes out and put Bruce on your bench, and then you can at least keep Bruce for another week or two, maybe hopefully through the buys, and then trade him out during there. If you don't, you're going to have to move Bruce on. And as I said, Witts would be your number one option. He's just absolutely killing it. I'd have Gawn 2, Darcy 3, and number 4 will be Timmy English. The other thing to think about is Darcy Cameron will pick up forward status next week for those who have him. Marshall's not far off forward status, but would have to play a lot more forward this week. So if you've got the ability to wait one more week, it opens up a lot of options. But then you could be in that situation, first buy next week and missing a ruck, but then it's only best 18. So other trade-in targets you've got to definitely think about is Bond. And then you've got the backmen in Dawson and Sinclair who have really friendly break-evens at the moment. But Dawson has been named up at half forward with their changes. So yeah, Sinclair seems to be the better option there. Outside of that, I think that's all we had. So, and as I said, captains pretty straightforward. Or actually, I just had one last one come through for Michikos. And thank you to everybody as well, because he shouted out to me that everybody who checked in about the loss of my family last week. So I really do appreciate that. So I've literally got no idea what to do with Bruce Hayes and Bailey Smith all out thinking of the donut this week. Yeah, it's definitely it's going to be an issue for some. Hopefully that you've got a McComb, or even if you've got Bailey Smith and you get Cooper Stevens, it's hopefully just 1 week or it's a couple of weeks there you can have him playing on field in that best 18, because if you've got Bailey Smith, it's still fine. You've got him. He's going forward next week, and that'll open up some options for you too. This week's a really interesting one. And even next week's not as interesting because we get all the dual position players, but it's that first week of buys. So where you're trying to set yourself up for in 2 weeks' time, you're going to have all these extra dual position players that's going to change your team. You're going to have 6 teams coming off the bye, so you want to set yourself up there to upgrade. And we'll have the 3 trades anyway. So if you've got the boost, it probably doesn't matter unless you're going to try to make 4 trades in there. So yeah, that's going to be a real game changer. And yeah, as I said, 2 weeks time will be really interesting. So watch out for those teams tomorrow, and continue to contact us, and we'll obviously update once we know more. But yeah, as we said, at the moment it looks like Bruce and Hayes are out. So yeah, just you need to adjust your teams accordingly because of that. Outside of that, we wish everybody the best for their super coaching for the weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye.